Two. Hey, welcome back to the Group Project Podcast. We're up to episode 90, which is kind of crazy. We're getting closer to 100, but I've got Allie Locker here. She is the Director of Elementary Teaching and Learning in Waukee, Iowa, just outside Des Moines. Allie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Jared. Super excited to be here and chat with you this evening.
You've got a really cool story. I'm excited to jump into it here. Maybe just share, you shared a little bit with me. You've had a unique path, kind of went across the country a couple times here, but maybe share your educational experience and leadership background.
Yeah, you bet. Oh, I love that I have an interesting story. That's great.
Yeah.
See if it holds true. So I don't think it's any stretch to the story that I can remember sitting in my first grade classroom as a 6-year-old and making the decision that I wanted to be a teacher. I remember it completely, and I never really strayed from that. I happened to have a dad who was an educator, a teacher, principal, superintendent. And so all the way from 6 years old till the time I went off to college to get my teaching degree, he challenged me with this question: are you sure? Are you sure? And he wasn't doing that as a means to discouraging me on this path. It was I care so much about education, and I know the passion and commitment and purpose it takes to do it for the right reasons. So I want to make sure that you're there when you really decide to tackle this. So appreciative to him for that. So as I wrapped up my education degree from Iowa State University, I decided I wanted to leave Iowa for a little bit and took on a couple summer jobs in Washington, D.C., doing some independent research for a law firm, which was highly fascinating. And I had no idea what that would do in terms of preparation for heading into the classroom and building some of my independence and ability to be flexible and so on and so forth. Had really intended to apply for teaching jobs on the East Coast. Had several applications into Virginia public schools, and then a friend from college decided they wanted to move to Denver. It had accepted a job in Denver, and I thought, maybe the West Coast, maybe the mountains might serve me well. And so moved there in 2000 and accepted a first grade position in a small school in the biggest district in Colorado, Jefferson County, and stayed there the entire time I was in Colorado for 10 years, taught first grade, second grade, third grade, and definitely had foundational pillars in terms of educational leadership built in that school and within my experiences there. And then eventually decided, well, you know what, Iowa wasn't too bad. Happened to meet my husband who lived in Iowa, my now husband. We dated long distance for 2 years, and knowing that these were where my roots are, and knowing that we were probably on the way to marriage and things like that, I decided to return to Iowa. And I was sharing with you earlier, Jared, that I never thought I would come back, and I couldn't be happier that I did.
Cool.
So that's when I accepted a third grade position with Waukee, and then quickly moved into an instructional coaching position in one of our elementary buildings, and then found my way to district office and the school improvement team as the director of elementary teaching and learning.
Okay, so you mentioned like you could not be any happier to be back here in Iowa, and we talked before the show. I look out you can't see it, but it is dreary. It is like 45 degrees. So tell me why are you so excited to be back in Iowa? I did the same thing, so I'm kind of playing a little devil's advocate here, but what made you so excited about coming back and being back in Iowa?
Absolutely. I think I was quickly reminded of what an amazing educational experience I had growing up. The teachers that feel like so strategically placed in my life, like they were there to grow me and transition me into different parts and areas of my life, to build they all built me beyond academics. I had teachers in my life here in Iowa. I grew up in the Cedar Rapids, Marion area that really saw me as a person, and I could share thousands of stories of things that I'm so appreciative of in that journey. And so when I came back, and I hadn't even anticipated this, when I came back and started serving in the state of my own experiences, a whole new sense of purpose and contribution surfaced for me. And I found that in Colorado, it wasn't that there wasn't purpose and contribution there, but it became so much more intimate in terms of my life work. And for lack of a better phrase, it just felt right to be home.
Okay.
And to do this work in the same place that I grew up.
So tell us a little bit more about your position. Those of us in smaller districts like myself, we hear about these director of teaching and learning positions, but we really don't know much about what's involved. So maybe tell us, what does your role look like?
Yeah, you bet. When I accepted this position, my husband joked, he said, "Oh, director of teaching and learning, just teaching and learning, the hopefully what the heart of education is, the things that you want happening every single moment within a district." So what's unique about this position, I believe, it lives at, the district office administrative level within the school improvement team. And I believe that with that, it is the closest thread back to the building, back to teachers and students. So I sit in this position that rests in the reciprocal heart of teaching and learning. And that's a gift that, when I drive to work every day, I hope to honor that with my actions and my work on a daily basis. So more specifically, one of the biggest parts of my job is overseeing our teacher leadership program. So that includes all of our full release teacher leaders like instructional coaches, instructional mentors, tech and innovation leaders, district literacy coaches, and district math coaches. So that's a big part of my day in and day out, is working with those teams. And they are, again, the key back to buildings. So within that, then I've got, it's everything curriculum, instruction, and assessment that could possibly surface. I work with all core content areas to move through curriculum cycles, which includes, teacher professional development related to those areas, purchasing of resources, looking at data to make educated decisions about what else we need, or what else we need to learn, or what instructional practices we need to sink our teeth into. I work with principals on a daily basis as well, in similar capacities. Work with our school improvement team to design professional learning, both at the district level, but also support that at the building level. And within all of that, again, getting back to the idea that this is about the heart of teaching and learning. Within all of that, I hope students know who I am. Obviously, not all 12,000 plus students know who Allie Locker is, but I hope I can walk into a building and there are students who are connected to this work, because they're the ones, engaging in so many of these decisions. So that's a really important component within the role.
Something I see that separates these roles that are at district office, but they have to go into the buildings and build relationships with all these different leaders in different buildings. The difference between the good and the great is like those ability to build relationships and to build trusting bonds with those individuals. And you're nodding your head, yes. How do you do that? I mean, it's kind of difficult, I would have to think. So share, what are the keys to working effectively with these different people across all of your buildings?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. It is a challenge and so important. We have 9 elementary buildings currently, about to open number 10 in next fall of 2022. And I think, the gift of having broad perspective, being able to go into all 9 elementary buildings, and to see that perspective and to see the systemic impact across that, I think you have to stay grounded in connection over comparison always.
Mm, hmm.
So my role is about connecting dots among these 9 buildings, about establishing threads and growing us collectively, um, uh, with every decision that we make. The moment it becomes comparison, all trust is lost. And you walk into any building on any given day, a principal, the teacher, a student is going to be able to name things that they feel really good about, that are going really well, and then they're going to have areas that they're trying to grow in, and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
And in that, we are all on the same playing field. So
Mhm.
how do we lean into each other, build connections with each other? So whatever we want to get better at, we can, and we can do that
Mhm.
together. So I would
Mhm.
say the mindset, connection over comparison always,
Yeah.
is something that I lean into. And then I think a lot about, from this position, always thinking about pace and process. We can get really wrapped up in all the things we want to do, want to achieve, want to control or accomplish. And really, I think the 2 things I have influence over are pace and process. At what speed do we move with things? When do we need to slow down, speed up? And then process, how do we operate? And so pace and process is something that people hear me talk about often. Anybody who would listen to this podcast would be like, oh, yep, that's Allie. Yep.
What do you see as the biggest challenge in your role?
Hmm. I would say you've got, pages upon pages of things that you're responsible for, or that need to get done under those 3 categories: curriculum, instruction, assessment. And to never lose sight of the fact that the only way that works is if it is an integrated, comprehensive approach. So I can't get too bogged down in one particular area, because otherwise I'm gonna lose balance in the other. So it's constantly being able to see the system collectively, and and with that comes being highly collaborative. So figuring out uh, who you need to talk to, when you need to talk to them, gaining a lot of perspective along the way. Um, it's something I would name as a challenge. And then with that, I think maybe one of the biggest things I learned moving from a building to district office. I mean, I'd spent probably 15 years in a building, 15, 16 years before moving to a district level position. Patience is a good thing. Um, and so knowing how many people are impacted by certain decisions,
Mm.
again, to always think about pace and process, and knowing that um, to give a little space between stimulus and response, so to speak.
Yeah, maybe talk. Can you take us through? Because I love what you're saying. I think you start to learn those things over the years about letting an idea kind of sit there for a little bit for the purpose of getting buy-in from a team. If you're, and I know I'm going off script here, but you got me thinking here. So if you're going to try to bring in something new, a new idea, whatever it is, initiative's a really bad word in these parts, but like what are maybe just like, what's the overview? How would you do that? Like, we're going to implement this change. And I know that's super broad, but like, how do you generate buy-in from 9 and soon to be 10 elementary buildings on a new idea? Can you just describe that process a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first step is learning a lot myself. So making sure I have an understanding of whatever it is. Um, so that would be step 1. And then um, again, having a lot of conversations, gathering feedback, and not from just one source. It can be really easy to, again, maybe just generate feedback from our team here, or so on and so forth. So it's district level perspective, principal perspective, teacher perspective, and then what I mentioned before. In a lot of cases, student voice needs to be present within that conversation as well. And then ultimately, I think the key step is getting really clear on what we're trying to accomplish, what our goals are, and then being able to bump those up against what we say we value in this district, and to see if that there's alignment there. And if there is, that's usually an indicator of moving forward. And I think that's where, when I mentioned patience before, like, to complete all of those steps, have the conversations that you need to have, communicate things in a fashion that is never too much or too little. But again, it takes some patience to walk through that process.
Absolutely. What's one professional practice you use in your role that you would recommend to others?
Oh, yeah. And I feel like I'm a broken record here a little bit, but again, youth voice and student voice is something that I feel very passionate about. So again, never losing sight of where their voice fits within this work is something that I would mention. Go ahead.
How do you get that student voice? You mentioned earlier 12,000 students. Waukee is, I couldn't believe it the other day. I grew up in Waterloo, and Waterloo is always, the fifth biggest district in the state, something like that. Waukee is actually like, it's more students in Waterloo now, I believe, which is nuts. So how do you get that student voice from your position at the district office?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, a quick example from just a couple of weeks ago, myself, alongside some of my school improvement colleagues, brought together a group of our high school juniors and seniors for a day of leadership learning. But with that, they had a chance to respond to things they feel are important, areas of growth that they see within their experience. And I mean, sitting down shoulder to shoulder, face to face with these students and saying, tell me what you think, and talk to me about what you're experiencing, and then share some of your ideas is really important. So that there's anywhere from that to, I have a curriculum team let's say a math curriculum team, and where we're making some decisions around resources or instructional practice. Hey, let's come up with a few questions that you could go back and ask some of your students related to this. And let's gather that data set to see if we have any blind spots here, or areas where, like, gosh, based on what we're hearing from students, this is the right move. So it can be even as simple as that. How do we bring that spirit and that, again, those ideas and those voices into our work.
Cool. I interrupted you there too. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that answer?
Oh, professional practice. This one's going to be really simple, Jared.
Yeah.
But again, knowing how many intersections you have with so many people in this role, say people's names, has been absolutely key to building relationships. And hopefully when a teacher receives an email from me related to curriculum, something like that, they can see themselves within that work, because we've had interactions that have let them know, I see you. Sure. and I know who you are and what you're about.
Cool. So let's go 10 years ago, right? We'll go back to out. Would you have been back in Colorado? Is that correct?
Yeah, I would have been.
Okay, so 10 years ago, Allie of 2011, what's one belief about education you have then that has completely changed now?
Well, if I can speak specific to leadership, educational leadership, I think the biggest change is that it can be fun and joyful. I'm gonna Um, you know, I think number one, probably 10 years ago, I don't know if I would have said like, this is something I could do, or I don't know that I could envision myself doing the role that I'm in now. And probably a little bit because I thought, gosh, she's going to have to be so serious, and I'm going to have to grow increasingly, just hard, and like, I was afraid of losing the fun and joy that I went into this profession with.
Mhm.
And what I have found is that the human capital in an educational organization, the people within it, if you can leverage fun and creativity and joy, you are limitless in what you can accomplish. Um, and maybe a little more simply said, what I've found out is that I can be me, as an educational leader. As I was reading educational leadership books and so on and so forth, like if I read, chapters 5 and 6 of said leadership book, and I thought to myself, like, well, I don't know if I'd actually say it like that or do it like that, or so on and so forth. So I had to like discover that who I am, like we are all leaders and we can be true to our authentic selves within the work. Yeah.
That's good. No, that's awesome. Can you pinpoint, this might be too difficult. It sounded like it was a long process, or was there a turning point that you can pinpoint and say, yeah, that's when I figured it out. That's when it made a turn for me. Can you pinpoint a year or a moment where you felt like this can be fun and I don't have to be that hard leader?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe it was a span of time, but it was in my transition to instructional coaching.
Okay.
And, it could have been a variety of factors. It might have been the building I was in, the staff at the time, the leadership at the time.
Mhm.
But I remember having an idea, and there was it was met with a yes. And it wasn't a like a extreme idea or anything, but like
Yeah.
the trust that came with like, oh, we've never thought about that before. Yeah, run with it. Make sure to check in and reflect and share how it's going. But like there was this yes mindset, um, where I felt like, I'm really seen in this work. And um, yeah, not a great answer there. It
No.
lacks specificity, but
No, I like that that whoever that leader was that said yes, whoever that person was, that made a huge, I mean, that was a huge turning point for you, which is really cool to hear, which is probably something that you do now in your leadership is like, I remember how much that impacted me. I'm going to let you run with it. I trust you, So I think that's an awesome answer.
yeah.
I do. Okay. So if somebody's looking at a role like yours,
Mhm.
it, what advice would you give to them? Like, full transparent. I don't know if I've ever shared this before. I actually at one point interviewed for a position similar to yours. And I look at it now and I'm not like you seem like you are passionate about curriculum instruction. I'm realizing, I'm glad I didn't get that job because I don't know if I could do that 24/7,
Mhm.
so if somebody's looking at that director of teaching and learning position in a large district, what advice would you have for them, whether or not they'd be good for that role or not?
Mhm. Well, so let me start here. I think for any position at that level, my biggest piece of advice is you got to know who you are and why you're in the work. You got to be able to answer who are you and why does this matter to you. Moving into any administrative level position can't be solely because it's the logical next step, or even because somebody told me I should or could. Like that's not enough in my opinion. Um, and I say that because in every day you will be challenged, again, to know who you are and why you're there. You have to be really strong and foundational in that. In addition to that, specific to this role, As we were talking about, you know, the effort that it takes to cross a variety of buildings and so on and so forth, you have to be the best listener on the face of the earth.
Mm.
And like, just when you think you can't listen anymore, you got to listen more. And what's been beneficial to me in that is practicing the art of non-judgment. So if I enter a conversation, I have got to truly be there to hear exactly what's being said, as opposed to putting my context on top of it. So learning how to listen with the intent to do exactly that is super important in this.
Okay. I love that. Best listener on the face of the earth. Man, I would not be able to cut it out. I mean, I don't have the best patience at times. So that's really fascinating in a role like that you have to be that really, that empathic listener. Is that right? I hope I'm
Yeah.
saying that right. Yeah. So, hey, before the show, you emailed a little bit back and forth, and you gave me some like really cool like talking points. I want to talk about your values and personal commitments, because I think you thought about this a lot, because you said, hey, let's talk about this. So tell me, values, personal commitments, what do those mean to you?
Mhm. Well, I think everybody would agree, especially in education, like the amount of information that we're taking in, the complexities of the job itself, the pure vastness of the work, um, um, requires you to have some lenses to look through, so you can really discern what it is that you're trying to accomplish, because otherwise it's just a wave of information and interactions and decision making. So that's why values and personal commitments have served me well. If I compare this to my personal life, recently I've started, don't laugh, Jared, but recently I've started theming my weekends for the same purpose, because I'll enter a weekend and have 1,001 things that I'd like to do or get done or experience, so on and so forth. And I have to have something to help me filter out what I'm actually going to do. So, the other weekend it was, hey, best mom, best wife was my theme. It's never going to be the best, but like the idea was this weekend's going to be about being a wife and a mom. And so I could filter every decision I made through those lenses. Another weekend, it was about movement. So every decision I made was about, hey, is this going to get me physical activity and movement? Then I'll know what to decide. So that's a simple way of saying, gosh, when you're sitting in, day to day with lots of information, complexity of interactions, the need to make decisions, having your priorities, your values in place is helpful in figuring out what decisions to make. So, in this role, you've heard me mention students several times. So one of my values that I uphold is this good for students? Does this serve our students well? Another value is joy. Does this help us sustain happiness? Because education should be a really joyful place. We learn better when we're joyful. And then, teacher professional growth is another, value I uphold, or a commitment that I make. So if I can filter my decisions through some of those values, I typically know I'm moving in the right direction.
So I don't know if this is a value, but it's definitely a saying that you use, which is everything is temporary.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to agree with what you're saying, but why don't you explain? You're big on everything is temporary. What can you tell us about this mindset?
Yeah, so this phrase became more important to me once I sort of move beyond the default meaning, I would say. So I'd always heard this phrase used kind of in relationship to challenge, or, a tough time or sadness or whatever. Like, the phrasing was always, everything's temporary, you can do this, you've got the strength, you'll get through this, so on and so forth. Well, once I flipped the coin and used this phrase in times of ease and wonderfulness, and like times that were really good, and I could say, you know what, everything's temporary, it actually increased my ability to be grateful and to appreciate the time and space I was in,
Mm,
which I may have missed in the past,
mm,
because good moments, just like bad moments, are temporary.
mhm,
Um, and that was the change for me. And, to push even a little farther, we rarely live in one spot for too long. So if what I've recognized is really everything is temporary to me, is I'm always on a journey. I'm
mm,
always in motion of what I'm learning or what's happening. So it has made me more aware of what I'm actually experiencing.
mm.
Um, it has helped me stay grounded in the process of learning, um, because we're always in motion. We're almost always in motion. Hopefully we're never just stagnant.
Mhm, mhm. Speaking about always being in motion, you are a big walker and hiker, and you did a lot. It sounds like you've done some really cool things in the mountains in Colorado and the woods of Iowa, and just some connections to leadership. Tell us about how the connection between the hiking and the walking and some of your leadership, your journey.
For sure. This is something I think about often. I walk every day. And when I say every day, I mean every day, anywhere from 2 miles to 5 miles to 10 miles. Two's rare, five is almost always. On weekends, it's likely 10 miles a day. And just that in itself, putting one foot in front of the other is a lesson for me. Um, Getting out of bed in the morning and making a commitment to doing that is important. It is what I do before I open any email
Hmm.
or my laptop, unless there's an extreme case. But making a commitment to myself has been really important. But you're right. Having lived in Colorado for a while, and I go back often. I hike by myself. I am known to go on, 4 to 6 hour hikes on my own. And that has taught me so much about myself as a leader. Number one, there's this incredible preparedness that you go in with it. I've got my food packed. I've got the right clothes on. I've got all the things that I do to prepare for that hike. And yet every single time there will be a moment where I turn a corner or, come up to a peak or something, and I get scared.
Hmm.
I had this moment of sort of fear of, oh my gosh, I'm by myself. What if I get lost? Oh, what's maybe around that tree? What wildlife is around that tree? And I have this moment of fear. And then my job becomes, how do I calm the fear and move forward?
Hmm.
How do I settle that emotion and keep going? And it has happened every single time. And it has taught me such strength of who I am, and helped me, again, discern when I need to have bravery and when I need to move forward. And in addition, there's silence within these hikes as well. And I think as leaders, uh, or in any role like this, we can get trapped into like sort of a task addiction, like that we become defined, like the only way I have worth is if I'm like checking things off, or I've answered all the emails, or I've done all the things. And when I am out walking and there's silence, what I've recognized is I have worth just by being. just by being, and it's not about tasks being completed. So um, it's taught me to get comfortable with silence and to be okay to detach in order as a means to rejuvenating.
So I'm going to ask you a quick question. Hiking in the woods in Iowa, do you have a special, I don't know if you can share your special spot, but is there any place you'd recommend if anybody's looking for a nice hike here in central Iowa?
Well, I'm grateful that I live in a place where I can walk out my door and just head straight in.
Nice. Nice.
Um, so there are lots of trails by my house, but Browns Woods is a great place. I love that area. If I'm going out and about, all the trails up by Saylorville Lake are some of my favorites. That's another, coming back to why I'm happy am back in Iowa. We have space, right? You go just outside of the city or the metro, and there is space.
Yep.
And you can find places to do this. And I cherish that for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Hey, if you're just joining us, this is episode number 90 with Allie Locker. Allie is the Director of Elementary Teaching and Learning for the Waukee School District in Waukee, Iowa. And I forgot to say this at the beginning of the show. This is actually one of our two sponsors of this show is Viterbo University. And this is actually Viterbo, who I work with a couple with Carol and Michael at Viterbo. And they said, you got to talk to Allie. They said that she'll be a fantastic interview. And so Carol, if you're listening, thank you so much for connecting us. You're right. Allie's, I love just some of the, besides just some of the leadership talk and some of the education talk, just some of the philosophies that you're sharing have been a lot of fun to listen to. So Carol, Michael, thank you guys so much for the connection here. All right, Allie, we're going to jump into some quick hitters here. Okay. So I asked these of every episode. So we already kind of talked about some hiking spots, some great places outside. Okay. If we're visiting Waukee, I know I'm going to put you on the spot here. I want the best restaurant. I know it said the best place you got to check out, but what is the best restaurant in your mind in Waukee?
Oh man, in Waukee. Oh man. Okay. We're kind of intersected with like West Des Moines and
We'll take it.
Okay.
I had two other former Waukee people on this, and I think they went a little over to West Des Moines. So you're good. Keep going.
El Fogón is a really cool Mexican restaurant with just the atmosphere itself is really fun. I grabbed takeout from there just a few days ago, and just to sit there and chat with the waiter and the hostess was lovely. So great food and great people interactions as well.
El Fogón. So I'm looking it up. El Fogón, Fogon.
You got it.
Okay. All right. There you go. If you're listening, you're gonna have to go back. I know way back we had one of the Waukee elementary principals, Nicole Johnson, and she also mentioned not El Fogón, but she mentioned the Mexican restaurant. I don't know which one. I'm not gonna know right now, but she mentioned one as well. So it must be some good Mexican in that area. So you'll have to ask her next time. Ask her. It was like a year and a half ago, but ask her. Okay. What is one sneaky good purchase you've made that has really improved your life?
Oh, Jared, I just wonder what people are going to think of me here, but I don't even know if I can count it as a purchase. I'm going to go with a cat.
A cat, C-A-T?
Yeah. But I didn't purchase it. I have never owned a cat or been a cat person. I've had dogs, but about a year and a half ago, a cat followed me home on one of my said morning walks and never left, despite us trying to find if there was an owner. But I was really against this cat. I didn't understand cats, only could speak dog at the time. But we ended up taking this cat in, and I have an only child. I have a 10-year-old son, and the joy that has come to our family by bringing this cat in, who now has, a little relationship with the dog that we owned. I think we increased our laughter and joy collectively at least by 80%.
Wow. So what's the cat's name?
Oh, the cat's name is Tibby.
Tibby.
And
Okay. Yep.
yep. And if we want to extend this story longer, the cat followed me home. I was, which bumped up to me leaving on a trip. And I had said, you know what, let's leave the cat outside. Leave the cat outside. So I'm out on my trip and checking social media, and I'm seeing pictures of my husband and son with the cat in the house with toys,
Oh,
all
geez.
the things. They named it. Yep. So
That's
but
that's a good story. I actually have those of you who follow me on social media, I actually just got a couple of cats here recently. So yes, I agree. They bring great joy. And for me, I can leave for a couple of days and they will take care of themselves. I would love to have dogs, but I don't know if I'm that responsible to get all that figured out. So everything you just said, I totally agree. Mine didn't quite go that route in terms of bringing them home, taking them in, but that's a cool story. Hey, you talked earlier about educational leadership books. So I'm curious, what is one book that has greatly influenced your life?
There are many, but actually, right when you asked that question, I went to a book called Coaching Conversations, which the subheading to that is transforming your school one conversation at a time. It's a really short, simple read, but what it did for me is it helped me recognize that that speaking powerfully is just as important as being a great listener. You've heard me reference listening, which is probably a strength of mine, but sometimes our strength can become a weakness if we overuse it. And what this book did for me is helped me figure out, like, how can speaking directly, choosing words wisely, articulating well with language actually be a strong coaching move. Like, you need both. And that was a real game changer for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm Coaching Conversations by Linda Gross. Chiliotes.
Yeah, you got it.
And Marcetta Riley. I hope I said those right. So yeah. So hey, if you're listening, hey, I agree. I don't do quite the coaching conversations that you do, I'm guessing, but having some of those questions or having some of that, I agree. I've read a couple other coaching books and I feel like they're a great investment of time, just so you kind of have an idea of how you can structure those conversations. What is one phone app that has positively impacted your life?
I feel like I keep breaking the rules on these questions, but I'm going to go with this. It's not an app. It's I've realized there's an off button. I mean,
I like it.
I swear, like the iPhone, like they make it tricky to shut it off. Like, you got to press 2 buttons and you got to wait for a second to get it to turn off. And I'm being serious here. I have been shutting my phone off for certain periods of time. And so I'm here to tell everybody they actually do shut off. You don't have to be charged. And that's been really, really helpful to just push that aside again for certain periods of time.
Love it. That's awesome. That's a really good answer. I actually don't have any social media apps on my phone. I have it all. I have to log in. Well, it's on my computer. But on the weekends, I allow myself to download it so I can do some things. But I agree with you. It just feels good to disconnect. And it helps clear your head a little bit. That's a great, awesome answer. Awesome answer. What's your favorite gas station convenience store? Where do you
Oh,
usually go? If you got a quick store over there, Casey's over there, come and go over there, and something I don't even know about over there, like where are you going?
well, so the something you don't know about the Hy-Vee Express, that's
Oh,
like they're now kind of joining with
they're
Smoky Road.
big.
Yeah. Um, there's a real convenient stop out here on my way in. So that would be where I stop.
Okay, so if you're stopping there and there's no, I, it's funny because people are saying, well, what time of day does it matter? Nope. Whatever, what are the three items you're going to go in there and grab? If it's your favorite, it's your birthday and you want to just enjoy three items from this Hy-Vee convenience store, what are you grabbing?
Yeah, this is such a sad answer. But again, people listening are going to say she is speaking truth because we see her with these three things from Hy-Vee Express probably daily. This is so sad. Uh, a bag of almonds, piece of string cheese, and an apple. Like, hands down, walk in with them almost daily.
So you're pretty healthy then.
I do pay close attention to what I eat. Yes.
So almonds, let's just talk about the almonds for a second. There's all kinds of almonds out there. I get the feeling you're going with just a regular, generic, nothing fancy. Just, is that correct or am I
Yeah.
wrong?
So, but when I'm feeling a little feisty, I'll go with a lightly salted almond.
If you're
And
feeling
Jared, if I'm going real crazy, let's say it's my birthday, I'm
okay.
gonna I'm gonna ditch the almonds. I'm gonna go for some spicy cashews to really
Oh,
crank it up.
okay. So spicy cashews. Is that what it's called? Spicy cashews, or is it habanero or something? Or
No, Planters has a nice spicy cashew that I would
okay.
highly recommend anybody to try.
Awesome. All right. Well, no, I eat pretty healthy too. And I've had this conversation with people. They're like, am I on a diet in this when I walk in or am I not? So it sounds like it doesn't matter. Like you really enjoy those things, which is
I
good, which is great.
Yes.
Okay. Can you ever recall get a job you applied for but did not get?
Yes. Actually, my first interview in Colorado for a teaching position, I applied for a fourth grade position at a school and, got to know for, a variety of reasons. But I remember, gosh, I haven't thought about this in a while, but I remember I got the no from the principal. It had been a lovely experience. I had the best time in this interview, felt very connected, felt like I, showed up as my best self. After I got off the phone with her, I remember having a really strong inkling to email her and again, thank her. I mean, I was all of 22 years old at the time, but I had this really strong inkling to email her to let her know how much I enjoyed the experience and thank you. And you know what, have a great year. And that's what prompted her to call the principal
Oh,
where I did get hired. She
cool.
said, you should interview this person. And what I learned, I mean, before I'd even had day one of my first job, what I learned is that the interview did not end with the last question.
Mm,
My interview actually started at no. Like,
mm.
how I behaved, how I responded to the no mattered, and actually got me to where I wanted to go at the end of the day. So, gosh, such a simple experience, but again, I learned that lesson right away. Um, yeah.
That's awesome. No, that's a really no. I love interview started at no. I don't know if you can see this. The key phrases I hear I write down. I've wrote down like a lot for you. So there's some good stuff here. What I feel like you think about this a lot. What is your best tip besides turning the phone off for being productive? What is your best tip for being productive?
Um, so let's talk about a couple of things. I never thought I'd say this, but in my 40s, like having an accountability partner, it has become really important. Like somebody who you're not just going to say to them, "Hey, I did it," but having somebody in your life that's invested in the same kinds of things or has their own commitments and like asks you, "Hey, how did that go today?" Or like hold you accountable for the things that you're committed to. So I would share that. but I'm, as you can tell, big on quotes and mindsets and things like that. There is a great quote by David White. He's a poet, writer, and something he shares is that the antidote to exhaustion isn't necessarily rest. Like, so I think one of the biggest interruptions to productivity is we feel tired, or, we can't get motivated, or so on and so forth. But actually, a little bit of action is what gets us up and running. So when I feel stuck, I can take a moment to relax or rest, but ultimately I have to figure out, move a little or get one part done, and that will spiral into the productivity that I'm seeking. Again, don't know if that's an awesome answer or not, but I think we can get trapped in this idea of like, I'm so tired, so on and so forth, but actually motion and action is what gets us back at it.
Do you drink any caffeine?
Not a lot. I have a coffee in the morning, and that can take on a variety of forms, but otherwise it's water during the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is one big goal you are currently working on?
So I am currently working to become certified as a yoga instructor. I would say since my 20s, I kind of had this like thought in my head, like I'd really love to, be a workout instructor or so on and so forth, but never really believed I could accomplish that. And I'm halfway there. I am, putting in a handful of hours each week through training and staying really committed to that journey. And, hopefully before Christmas or before winter break or whatever, I'll have that certification.
So once you have that certification, what do you feel like is like your next step?
I would be honored to teach, to actually be an instructor. But with even beside that, my own understanding of the practice itself and my awareness of, my physical health and mental health as a result of just really slowing down and anchoring into this practice has been, I've already won, or I've already gained a whole lot of benefits from committing to that. And then if I can add an and to that, I've mentioned my son a couple times, and my goal with him is always to be present in his journey. I've shared with a couple people that I will have this recurring dream that he's 16, and then I wake up and I'm like, oh, he's only 10. He's only 10. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. So if I were to put something at the tippy top of my list, it's this kid.
Awesome.
He's really neat.
What's your son's name?
Ben.
Okay. So you got the cat. We've got Tibby, and then
Yep.
Ben. And what's your husband's name?
John.
Okay, Ben and John. Very simple. Ben and John. Got it.
The dog, Max.
And
Yeah.
Max. Oh yeah. Awesome. That's great. Hey, we're actually at the end of the interview here. Is there anything we didn't talk about? We talked about a lot of different topics. Very fascinating. Carol, thank you for connecting us. This was great. Is there anything that you're like, hey, I really want to make sure I share this before we wrap things up?
I would just say, like, whoever's listening, like, if you haven't heard it in a while, I believe in you. Like, and I mean that. I believe in humanity, and that, you know what, if we can lean into one another, if we can move with compassion and understanding and all of those things, like we can accomplish anything. Again, if there's anybody listening who hasn't heard that they've got potential and can accomplish anything they want to. I believe in you.
Very cool. That's a great way to finish this off. Hey, if they want to connect with you, we are both kind of anti social media, but is there a place where there's best to connect with you? Is it email? Is it social media? What should they do?
You can find me on Twitter at Allie_Locker. Find me there. You can find some presence at allenlocker.com, which is a blog that I maintain. Would have you to see people there. And otherwise, email is a great way to get in touch with me as well.
Yeah, I did not bring up her website. It's a really cool website. Lots of pictures, some blogs. So, I mean, there's some good stuff on there. So check out her website there. So, hey, Allie, thank you so much. It was a lot of fun. One more time, Allie Locker, the Director of Elementary Teaching and Learning in Waukee. Some cool stuff there. So you're doing some awesome things. It's been really cool to connect with another person from Waukee, because it seems like you guys are just doing some awesome things in your district.
Happy to be here for sure.
All right. Well, I will let you go and take off there and enjoy the rest of your night. Okay.
I'm headed to yoga training.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, good luck. Hopefully you're ready for it. And you have to let me know when you open up your studio. Okay.
I will certainly do that.
All right. Thank you so much.